Okay, so let's see this particular passage on philosophy. So let's go ahead with this particular passage. So, calling someone a skeptic can be a term of praise or condemnation. Condemnation. Okay. Now, what this particular line is saying that calling someone a skeptic. Now, before we get into this, we need to actually understand what does the word skeptic actually stands for. So, I'm sure that you must have heard about skepticism, right? So, skeptic, in a very simple manner, you can say that skeptic is a person that is inclined to, we can say, question someone's opinion. Okay, so that is the case. So, skepticism is a kind of a doubt. Okay, it's a questioning attitude or a doubt toward some sort of the claims. Okay. That are maybe claims on some sort of the belief that is existing or some sort of the dogma that is existing, right? So that is basically a skepticism. So the author says that calling someone a skeptic can be a term of praise. It can be a compliment, or it can be kind of an insult also. It depends upon the situations. Okay. Too often, it expresses approval when the target of skepticism is a claim we reject, and disapproval when the target is a claim we hold dear. Okay. So the author says that people usually like skepticism when it is used against ideas they don't believe in. Okay. So, in case if you don't believe something, okay, some claim that you reject, okay, and someone is being skeptic towards those ideas, okay, that you don't believe in, okay, so people usually like skepticism at that point of the time, okay, but they dislike skepticism when it is actually used against those ideas that they care about or believe strongly in. Okay, so मतलब किस चीज को वो बिलीव नहीं करते, तो अगर कोई उस पे स्केप्टिसिज्म होता है तो दे अप्रिशिएट. ओके, किस चीज को they believe in, somebody raises the skepticism on that, so they don't like that, right? So this is what they are saying. Now, I might praise skepticism towards homeopathic medicine, but disdain skepticism towards human evolution. Now, the author has kind of given us the example that I may support like someone who is actually doubting homeopathic medicine, okay? Because maybe the author is the one that who does not believe in the homeopathic medicines, okay? But I may not like people doubting human evolution, because that means that the author is kind of supporting human evolution. Now, someone with a very different set of beliefs might praise skepticism regarding the moon landing, but disdain skepticism regarding the existence of God. Okay, and then another example that another person who believes different things might support doubting the moon landing. Okay, and while he might dislike someone doubting the God's existence, right? So basically, what this paragraph is talking about is that people are generally biased. Okay, so they are generally biased in how the word they basically use the skeptic. Okay, so they support skepticism when it agrees with their beliefs and oppose it when it actually challenges their beliefs. So this is what the case is. Okay, condemnation is kind of a strong disapproval. Okay, so that was one word that you should know. Okay, disdain is again kind of feeling that something is not worthy of. Okay, so that is disdain here. Some of the words that you should know here from this paragraph, right? Now, sometimes though skepticism is taken to be a healthy attitude towards belief, a characteristics that we might praise regardless of its target. Okay, so author says that sometimes people think that skepticism is a healthy attitude towards belief, or it's a good habit. Okay, no matter what it is actually questioning. Okay, फर्क नहीं पड़ता कि क्या question करे. So a characteristic that we might praise regardless of its target. Okay, so it means that being careful about what you believe, and that is usually seen as a positive quality. Now, skepticism is supposed to reflect a willingness to question and doubt, a key characteristics of scientific thinking. Okay, now, what does this say is that skepticism means being ready to ask questions and doubt things. Okay. Now, they say that this is kind of a thing which is very important in scientific thinking, or it is important in science, because scientists don't accept things without, you can say, an evidence or a proof. Okay. Now, skepticism encourages us to look at the evidence critically. It allows for the possibility that we are wrong. Okay. So, they say that the skepticism helps us examine the facts carefully instead of just blindly believing something. Okay, and it also reminds us that we might be wrong, and that's okay. Okay, to look at the evidence critically. So that's the case, it's allowed for the possibility that we are wrong. Okay, it seems like a win then to learn that courses in skepticism can be decreased in the belief in the paranormal or as reported in an article forthcoming in Science and Education, that teaching students to think critically about history can decrease belief in pseudoscience and other unwarranted claims. Okay, so what does the author says here is that the author says that it sounds like a good thing, that learning skepticism can help people stop believing in things without evidence, okay, especially that paranormal ideas, okay. And also teaching students to think carefully and critically can actually, we can say, reduce the belief in false or unproven ideas, okay. So basically, in and all, we can see that this kind of the paragraph was kind of talking about skepticism in a positive manner, okay. It is saying that it is, the skepticism is valuable, okay, because it helps people think critically and just avoid believing false or unsupported ideas, okay, which is actually, we can say, against the science or education. Now, some of the words that you should know here was the paranormal, okay. So paranormal is something that cannot be explained by science, like ghostly experience, okay, or supernatural powers, we can say. Pseudoscience again is a one word, that ideas that pretend to be scientific but are actually not based on science, okay. Unwarranted was another word, that is not justified or not supported by good reasons or evidence, right? Now, but taken too far, skepticism misses its mark. Now, we can see that the author has presented the positive. Now, the author is getting into the side of the negative side of the it. Okay. So, but taken too far, skepticism misses its mark. So, if you doubt everything too much, okay, skepticism stops being helpful and becomes wrong or not up to the mark. Okay. Now, it is important to avoid the error of believing something we ought not to believe. Okay. Now, author says that it is important to avoid the error of believing something we ought not to believe, but it's also important to avoid the error of falling to believe that which we should. Okay. So basically, what the author is saying is that I agree that we should not believe, I mean, like false things. Okay. The author says I'm agreeing upon it. Okay. But then the author says that we should also be careful not to reject the true things also, okay. So he says that the both mistakes are bad, so we should not believe false things, तो वो तो सही है, okay, लेकिन जो true things है, okay, हम उसको भी believe नहीं करें, or we try to reject that also, so that is not up to the mark, right? Now, if the aim is to detect signal and not merely to reject noise, then an education win would require greater differentiation between warranted and unwarranted claims, not merely the rejections of unwarranted. Okay. Now, this looks like a little philosophical, and that's the nature of the top passage, right? It's a philosophical passage. Okay. So it says that if the aim is to detect signal and not merely to reject noise, then an education win would require greater differentiation between warranted and unwarranted claim, not merely rejections of unwarranted. So the author says that if our goal is to find truth, okay, that is, our goal is to find signal or a truth, okay, and not to reject the false things, okay. So reject noise, maybe we can say here, is a false, okay. So हमारा aim अगर ये है that we need to find out something that is true, okay, but not to reject the false things, then we must learn to tell the difference between the true and a false idea, okay, warranted and an unwarranted claim, because not just reject everything that seems doubtful, okay. Now, this point is sometimes lost in praising skepticism and skeptical thinking, with its emphasis on what we reject rather than what we uphold. Okay, so they say that people often focus too much on rejecting ideas and forget that we should also accept and support the ideas. Okay, now it is important to say that this isn't intended as a criticism of the skeptical movement or of a skeptical philosophy, both of which endorse more nuanced versions of what skepticism entails. Okay. Now, the author says that the writer is not basically criticizing some sort of skepticism or philosophy, okay, because they already have a more balanced and careful understanding of skepticism. It is, however, a criticism of the way skepticism, as used in casual conversation, is sometimes held up as a virtue in itself, okay. So author says that the writer is criticizing how people casually use the word skepticism, okay, treating it as automatically good even when it is not used properly, okay. The virtues we should really be upholding and for which skepticism is only an oblique guide are what I'll call truth tracking and humility, okay. Now, author says that What really matters is actually finding the truth. Okay, so that is truth tracking. That what matters is actually finding the truth. Okay, and being humble. Okay, that is humble in the sense that we can accept that we can be wrong. Okay, and skepticism can help, but it is not enough on its own. Okay, so basically what this paragraph says, that skepticism is useful. Okay, but then too much of this skepticism is negative, or it is harmful. Okay, and the author says that we should not only always reject the false ideas, but we should also accept the true ones. And the real goal is actually to find the truth and to stay humble. Okay, not merely just doubting everything. Okay, the words were easy, I guess. The some of the words that would you would have getting a problem here. The one word we can say, so I think so, differentiation you all know, nuance you all know. Okay, oblique guide is a one word, so maybe something that is not very clear. Okay, so that's okay. So that is what he says, that the virtues we should really be upholding of which skepticism is only an oblique guide. Okay, so something that is not a clear way, or an indirect way, we can say. Now, truth tracking is about getting things right. Okay, identifying the signals amidst the noise. So we know that the signal here refers to something that is true, and the this noise is referring to something that is false. Okay, so he says that truth tracking is about getting things right. That truth tracking means finding what is true. Okay, and identifying the signal amidst the noise. That it is about picking out the truth, or maybe real or correct information, which is the signal. Okay, from all the confusing and the false information, which are basically the analogical to noise. Okay, now we don't want to be fooled by noise, okay, about a link between vaccines and autism, for examples, but we also don't want to miss out on a signal about the real benefits of vaccination. Okay, so the author says that we should not believe in a false ideas. Okay, that is wrong claim about vaccines and autism, that some of the claim. Okay, this was in the news sometimes back. Okay, that the vaccines actually creates the autism among the kids. So the author says that we should not be fooled by such sort of false ideas, but we also don't want to miss out on signals. Okay, but we should also not ignore the true facts, the that is the benefits, or how vaccinations actually help people. Okay, so truth tracking isn't only about rejecting noise, but also about differentiating signal from noise. Okay, so they says that truth tracking is not always rejecting the noise or the false ideas. Okay, it is about clearly telling the what is the difference between what is true and what is false. Okay, so in short, this particular paragraph, we know it was talking about the truth tracking, and truth tracking means finding the truth by separating correct information from the false information. And it is not enough to reject the wrong ideas, we must also recognize and accept what is true. Okay, not much of the difficult words here, so let's go to the penultimate paragraph of the passage. So humility is about recognizing the possibility for error, and therefore holding beliefs tentatively or defensively. Okay, now he says that humility basically, so truth tracking ki baat ho chuki hai, now the author is moving to the humility. So humility means accepting that we might be wrong. Okay, it's about recognizing the possibility for error, and therefore holding beliefs tentatively or decisively. Okay, now but we should hold our beliefs. Okay, not as 100% sure, we should doubt that. Okay, but recognizing uncertainty does not mean that all bets are off. Okay, but just because we are not completely sure, it does not mean that everything is equally uncertain. Okay, yeah, everything is all we can say is random. Okay, some bets are still better than other bets. So the author says that even with uncertainty, some ideas are more likely to be true than others. You don't know who will win the next horse race, for example, but that does not mean that you would assign equal probability to all the contenders. Okay, so author says that you may not know who is the winner of the race, but you would not say that every horse has the same chance. Some are definitely better than the other. Okay, similarly, we can quantify uncertainty by assigning degrees of beliefs to different propositions. So author says that in the same way we can measure how sure we are about different ideas. Some beliefs we are more confident in, other less. Okay, I might think that life on the another planets is unlikely and that the ESP is unlikely, yet assign a much higher probability to former than to the latter. Okay, so understand what the author is saying. So author says that I may think that both life on another planets and ESP, I hope you know that it's an extrasensory perception. Okay, so author says that both life on other planets and ESP are unlikely कि होगी या नहीं होगी पता नहीं है, but I believe that life on another planet is more possible than extrasensory perception. Okay, similarly, I might think that the rain tomorrow and human evolution are highly likely, but assign a much higher probability to the latter than to the former. Okay, so author says that I may think both rain can be there tomorrow and human evolution will going to happen in future. Okay, but I'm more certain about ki human evolution definitely hoga than tomorrow's rain. Okay, so quantifying uncertainties allows us to hold even strong beliefs with a modicum of doubt while simultaneously recognizing that they are far more likely than the alternatives we defensively reject. Okay, so author says that measuring our level of certainty help us to believe strongly in something, okay, but still keep a small amount of doubt while also understanding that our belief is much more likely than the other options we reject. Okay, so basically this paragraph talks about humility, that humility basically means that accepting that we can be wrong, okay, but still judging some beliefs as more likely than others. Okay, so we should not think that everything is equal and everything needs to be doubted. Okay, we should weigh the ideas carefully, and again, yet we should stay open to the doubt. Okay, so the words here that you should know is, first of all, you should know what is an ESP. So anyone has an idea what an ESP actually stands for? So ESP is basically an extra sensory perception. Okay, some sort of the paranormal, we can say, ability to gain information. Okay, we no, in a very simple manner, no, we call it as a sixth sense. So that is how you, I think so that you'll be able to relate it in a better manner. Okay, and other than that, diffusively was one word. Okay, so I mean, like, this is diffusively is holding a belief in a way that can change if new evidence appears. Okay, so changing, not very particular. Okay, so that's a case. A modicum is actually a small amount of something, so that was the sum of the words. Okay, now let's go to the last paragraph of the passage. So skepticism is a poor proxy for truth tracking and humility. So the author means that skepticism is not a very good substitute for finding the truth or being truly humble. Okay, it imitates those qualities a bit, but it does not actually help you fully achieve them. Okay, it gets us half of truth tracking, okay, and it gets us some of humility. So author says that it helps actually filter out the false, okay, I mean, like, false things or rejecting the noises, okay, and it actually encourages us questioning and doubting, which are part of being humble. Okay, but these are only partial beliefs, they are not the fully picture. Okay, what it does not get us is signals with degrees or belief or degrees of belief or more ambitiously truth in an uncertain world. Okay, so author says that skepticism kind of fails to provide us, it does not help identify what is actually truth. Okay, so it does not help us finding the signal, it does not help us assign a level of confidence, okay, so degrees of belief, and it especially struggles in situation where certainty is impossible. Okay, so that is the case. Now that seems like a more praiseworthy aim to me. Okay, so the author is kind of concluding that actually tracking truth, that is including handling uncertainty and forming justified belief, is a more valuable goal than just being skeptical. Okay, so in a very simple word, the author says that skepticism helps you to avoid being wrong. Okay, but it does not help you actually enough to figure out what is right. Okay, and author believes that what is right is something that actually matters. Okay, rather than help you avoid being wrong. Okay, so this is what this particular paragraph was all about. Okay, passage was all about. So it was about skepticism, that it is being raised it as a praise, and the condemnation. Then the author gets into the positives and negatives of it. Okay, then the author says that the two things are really important, that is truth tracking and humility. Okay, and this skepticism does not help much. Okay, in this case scenario, in finding the truth tracking and the humility. Okay, it just helps you avoid being wrong. Okay, कि आप गलत नहीं हो तो आप डाउट कर रहे हो उस चीज को, but it is not enough to figure out that what is actually right, and what is actually right according to the author matters the most. Okay, so that is the case. I hope you're able to get this particular passage. आंचल बन गए